Thanks, Manny. Thanks everybody for coming. We have one guest who should be on top of us, and a few other people that I would like to introduce themselves, if I could, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Hartung. Can you hear me? I'm a senior staff attorney at the New England Innocence Project, or NEAP, and we're based in Boston, but we do wrongful conviction work in the 6 New England states. And our mission is to find and free wrongly convicted people who are factually innocent. And we also do policy work to reform the criminal system to prevent wrongful convictions from happening in the future. And the third part of our mission is to support exonerees who've been freed in their reintegration after years of wrongful incarceration. And before starting at NEAP, I was a law professor in Boston for about 20 years, and I did research and studied the causes of wrongful conviction. So it's a pleasure to be here with this Worcester community who cares about police reform. So thanks for having me.
Nice. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Bill Gardner, and I'm a retired, disabled, former police officer for the city of Worcester. Served 10 years with the city of Worcester. And initially, I've always been the person that said, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, and certainly did that in the police department. But when I got out, I got involved in organizing and things like that because there were groups around the city that were getting involved in organizing, and I would always get called up. Bill, we want to talk to you. If a police officer does this, can we do that? Or if this happens, should we do this? Or what should we do? And eventually I started just joining these groups, and eventually just really fell into this full-fledged police reform tack that I'm on now. So hoping that we get some good answers, get some good information out to you and some good answers for what this could look like.
Matt, say hello.
How you doing? I'm Nat Cosenza. Sorry. I'm Nat Cosenza. I did 16 years of prison for a crime I didn't commit with the Worcester Police Department. Currently going through a civil suit on the appeal process with them, so I cannot discuss much about my case, but I can discuss my feelings on the police department.
Hi, Chris Ayala. I was arrested back in October 2019. I was arrested trying to get back home and filed a lawsuit against the police department.
So, Bill was with the Worcester Police Department between 1994 and 2004. He left the department a few months before, I believe, in the same year that 2 chiefs ago, Chief Jem was appointed. So I would like him to talk first about kind of his experience, and he'll lead us up to kind of give us an idea of what the environment was like inside the police department leading up to kind of the time period that we're focusing on.
Whew. How long do we have? Well, for me, the bad behavior started in the academy. It was immediate that I didn't fit into their mold. Even as simple as taking class exams. You get the exam back. You know how you all do in high school. It's like, hey, go to the locker room. Would you get a number 5? Would you get a number 6? And one question would come up, and somebody would say, oh, yeah, we can do that. And I said, well, no, actually, you can't. If you're going to go get a warrant, execute a warrant on, say, John, and John is in Jimmy's house, unless you saw John in the street and said he had a warrant and he ran into Jimmy's house, or which is fresh and continued pursuit, or you go to the door, knock knowing that he's in there, and you hear somebody say, I'm going to kill you. You can kick the door and go in. Now, if you find John, now you can arrest him. You don't know what the F you're talking about. We're the effing police. We can do what we want to do. Of course, I was one of the only people to get the question right. Another situation like that was a fact pattern that was supposed to lead you to determine whether or not you could arrest on a felony or not. And the case pattern was basically a motor vehicle broken into in the nighttime, certain value of instruments, audiovisual stuff stolen, and that kind of thing. And it led you right up to like, yep, arrest, felony, eat piece of cake. But it was back in the day when they used a Duquesne machine, which used to put in paper that overlapped each other sometimes. And because of that, part of the fact pattern was missing. And I was reading the fact pattern, found the vehicle, found that property was spilled all over the ground. But then all of a sudden I was driving down an aisle and I see two people carrying a VCR box. Identified that the VCR box came out of the truck, but didn't connect them to the truck. And the sergeant had come out and said initially, you know, we were going to throw out this question because of what happened with the decaying machine. But one officer really, or one cadet really rationalized what happened. And with the little information he had, actually came up with the right answer. So we're keeping the question in. And that cadet is Billy Gardner. And from the back of the room, fucking know-it-all. And that was the academy. And it got worse from there. By the time I graduated and got on the street, there were already officers who didn't want to work with me. My field training officer pulled me around by the nose all week. Luckily, he got promoted, so I got rid of him. But I was just treated like crap because I wouldn't break the law, wouldn't bend the law, and I wouldn't, as I like to call, step on people's necks. I like to treat everybody as human. And I guess that's a good way to start.
And so Bill left the department in 2004, and then later that year, Chief Jem was appointed. By then, City Manager O'Brien, and I wanted to cover a few cases of really focusing on internal investigations, how the internal investigations department within the police department investigates their own, right? So I use a lot of terms for this, internal investigations. Internal Affairs box is the actual term that they use, which is the Bureau of Professional Standards. Its mission statement is to ensure the integrity of the Worcester Police Department and its personnel, both sworn and non-sworn. So here's a video from a case that occurred late in Chief Jem's tenure. The scope of this, of course, we're going to cover the last two police chiefs. Video of something that happened in a holding cell at the Worcester Police Department in December of 2014. So it is alleged that officer, Michael Matka, went into the cell and attacked the person who was leveraging slurs against him. And it is said that he kicked him in the head. This is a shackled and handcuffed prisoner. Here's what the police department had to say about that. Let's see if I find the line.
This administration, this department is a big believer of transparency. When something like this comes forward, no matter what it may be, if there's enough of evidence to support the claim, we go forward and we take out the appropriate charges against the officer. And we take out the appropriate charges against the officer. And we take out the appropriate charges against the officer.
Just wanted to highlight that part. Maka was a 17-year veteran, had no discipline record to speak of. That happened in December. The person came back and filed a complaint in March 2015, 3 months later. 4 other officers knew. You could see them in the screen there. The box comes back with probable cause to charge him with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, because he kicked him, and a civil rights violation. And what led all the news reports on this was the civil rights violation. He allegedly said something about his, quote, black skin. I watched the whole video. I hear a discussion between a black officer and the inmate about their black skin. I don't hear him ever say anything to that effect. But that's what led all the news reports about it, which I find interesting. That didn't get through a grand jury. They never charged him with that. Was not indicted. He was indicted for assault. The three of the four officers retired before the internal investigation completed, which is typical. The fourth officer signed a last chance agreement contingent on testifying against this officer. Also found him very interesting. He was convicted of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. 2 years probation, is obviously fired. That's great. If that was the standard, I think we'd all probably be fine with that. He did a bad thing. Everything right was followed. But we know that that's not the standard. So why him? Why him? And the next one has even bigger questions. Important point that he claimed that he was openly supporting someone in a union election that the chief did not want to win, and that he was singled out, was his claim. I don't know if that's true, but it's a claim. The next one, and this is, I didn't learn about this until recently. I was kind of shocked. It was a long time ago. 2007, David Ralston's at home. Gets a call from his neighbor about three prowling people around his home. And, in the end, he holds them. He comes out, meets his wife and his neighbor who made the call, and sees three, what ends up being, I believe they're all 15 years old, walking away. They turn and see them and approach. He says they start to fan out like they're going to attack, so he draws a service weapon, holds them at gunpoint until police arrive. Bops says that he used unnecessary force, a bunch of stuff. They claim that he pistol whipped all three kids and kicked one of them while they were on the ground. This is the internal investigation. So they fired him. Good, if that's what happened. But the Detective Bureau investigated and said, nothing here. The district attorney didn't want to charge anybody involved with the kids, him, nobody involved in charges. And so the union takes it to arbitration, which is typical when they have a dispute. And the arbitrator finds that the kids all told different stories and that Bops never kind of connected all the stories, never figured out what was real, and instead kind of weaved the narrative through all three of the stories. And, rather than being kicked like a soccer ball, the kid that said he was kicked said it was, he was walking and kicked him while walking, which is different than kicking him like a soccer ball. And none of the three kids said all three of them were hit with a weapon, and nobody called it a pistol whipping. What the officer said was he was frisking them, clipped one of them with his weapon in his hand. So they fired him. He's fired, and arbitration puts him back in his job 2 years later. The city contested the arbitrator's finding in Superior Court, lost. Took it to appeals court and lost. So there's now 2 court trips to lose both, and he gets back in his job in 2009. And a month later, the chief decides that he's not going to renew his license to carry, which instantly has him fired again. Can't carry a gun, can't be a cop. They brought in an arbitrator who ruled in his favor. The city then took it to Superior Court and appeals court, lost all the way. And this guy worked a month between 2007 and 2015 when he was finally reinstated. And of course, his explanation of why he was treated like this was that one of the boys' mothers was friendly with the chief's wife. To be fair, the chief said that wasn't the case. They worked in the same place. They don't really know each other. And certainly aren't friendly. But they paid him a $375K settlement for how he was treated, and ended up paying him $630K in back pay, not including all the legal fees involved. So why these two? I don't have an answer. There's the internal investigation. It was the only of many investigations that found that he had really done anything wrong. And to take it to court twice, to go through that whole process is pretty crazy. I would love your thoughts on make any legal sense.
Don't know if I can do that, but maybe I can just help contextualize a little bit of the role of police misconduct in wrongful conviction cases, because one thing we know is that professional misconduct of various kinds, especially police and prosecutorial misconduct, show up in case after case in exonerations. And by exonerations, I'm talking about cases where a conviction is overturned based on factual innocence. So like Nat's case. There are nearly 3,400 exoneration cases known in the United States that have been, documented. But we know that that number is just the tip of the iceberg. You know how long it takes. It took Nat 15 years to prove his innocence. And, there are, for every person who's been exonerated, there are more who remain behind bars still trying to prove that. And we know in Massachusetts, the number of exonerations is 88. And, that number changes by the month, by the week, it goes up all the time. But when you have police officers who are known to have committed misconduct, it doesn't typically happen just one time in an otherwise illustrious career. And so if that information doesn't become known, if there's no transparency, if there's no accountability, then that kind of misconduct can lead to wrongful convictions. And we're talking about things like, coerced confessions, which I know we're going to talk about more later, brutality in the cases, the examples that you just gave, coercing witnesses and witness testimony, performing suggestive identification procedures, like in Nat's case, and the list goes on and on. And I'm an attorney with the New England Innocence Project, so we focus on factual innocence. But I want to be clear: police misconduct is a problem beyond factual innocence. It doesn't mean it's okay if the person is guilty. We want accountability and transparency for police for all the human beings that they encounter, not just the ones who are innocent of the crimes they commit. And I'll just say one other thing just about, the importance of this. So the cost, of course, is the, human life and liberty and dignity who are for the folks who are suffering at the hands of this police misconduct, but also, all of you taxpayers in Worcester and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And, you heard about some of these dollar figures. Who's paying that out? That's you, the taxpayers. And, a couple of figures nationally as of May 2023 for all exoneration cases in the United States, the dollar number of that was paid out for compensation and civil rights liability was $2.7 billion. And over half of that is stemming from cases involving police misconduct and prosecutorial misconduct. In Massachusetts, $19.3 million for liability related to wrongful convictions. So these are numbers that all of us who are part of this system, as people who reside in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and this is a government that operates in our name, and we're paying for this, so we should be aware of it.
Yeah, and just to tie that together, I mean, these investigations that are weird are, to say the least, are done by the people that are primarily holding officers accountable. They're investigating that misconduct. Right? Mm-hmm. And if that's a farce, then we have we're encouraging bad behavior, right?
Absolutely.
Bill, do you have any? Did they wrap you up with the internal investigations unit when you were there? And did you have an experience there? No. So there's these two weird cases, and especially the last one that I mentioned with Ralston is going on. And to cut back to the union thing for just a second, the day after the second time the arbitrator ruled against the city and for the union and the officer, Chief Jem ended a rule that had existed for 18 years that allowed the president of the patrolmen's union to work during police hours on union stuff. So, I mean, it's the next day. It's direct, firing back at the union. I thought that was also somewhat interesting. But while that whole Rojas case is going on, the Ralston case is going on, there's this guy, Mark Rojas. He was found guilty in 2005 of assault and battery on an ex-girlfriend's boyfriend, sentenced to probation. And then a few months later, the verdict gets set aside. There's an offered plea, which is sort of like no contest, and gets a suspended sentence. And the thought it was fun fact that the lawyer that turned it all around was our current district attorney. He was Rojas's defense lawyer in that case. But nonetheless, the Telegram's looking for records on this person in 2008, and they get 10 files. He choked someone involved with the mother of one of his children, held a handcuffed man while another officer hit him, lied to internal investigations, and in 2008, while this kind of is all emerging, the chief revokes his license to carry permanently, which is basically ends his career. But at the time, he's out with a broken ankle and on disability, so he can't be fired. This was the third time his license to carry had been revoked, this time for good. 4 cases come to the Telegram that are almost, full pages of redactions. That ends up in a legal battle for a couple of years that they settle. They actually didn't have to pay out money this time to hide public information. But they come to an agreement and release the records. 4 of those cases, of the 4 redacted cases, 3 are personal. He's got 3 ex-girlfriends he's been harassing. He's harassed 2 of their partners. He was also running background checks on some of them using police resources. And at one point, internal investigations decided, had concluded that he was an actual genuine threat to an ex-girlfriend still on the force. He had a discipline file when the G&G finally got the whole thing that was over 1,000 pages. This is at the same time that they're throwing Ralston out of his job twice. And the interesting thing was, it seems like, it's hard to prove, it seems like the timeline would say that the first 2 girlfriends and their partners that he harassed was okay. This was, in his discipline file, a poem that he wrote to an ex-girlfriend about killing her, known to the police department. It's in his discipline file. And one of those girlfriends, the third one, it seems like, based on news reports, the third one in that timeline was the daughter of the chief. And then it was really important that his license to carry get revoked. He stayed out on disability and retired on a disability pension in 2010. So again, the one to juxtapose, the first, what Michael Monica did was bad, it was criminal, he should have been charged, that's great. But when you compare the 2, something is amiss here. This person is seemingly, not my words, the Bureau of Professional Services Standards words were that he posed a genuine threat to an ex-girlfriend. Why he was allowed to arrest people for as long as he did. And there's 15 investigations there. We don't need to go through all of them. Some of them are horrific. Beating a nursing assistant, seemingly, she says, caused a physical altercation with a nursing assistant at a gas station who was in uniform, for example. Seems like a bad guy who probably shouldn't be empowered to arrest people. But they were busy taking Ross to the court 6 times. Bill, I know you didn't know any of these people, you were gone by then. But do you have any thoughts or any experience with, kind of this stuff being allowed to continue?
Actually, I know both of those people. Ralston and I were classmates, and Motika came on shortly after I did. This is allowed to happen because the police culture in this country is completely flawed. It's disgusting. It's all about us against them. Statements are made. One of my favorite statements that I like to bring up is that officers will often say, I'd rather be carried by 12 than I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, which if you loosely translate that means shoot first and ask questions later. There's a whole, if I tell you to do something, do it. And if you don't, there's going to be hell to pay. Ultimately, they don't treat or see other people as human. And that has a lot to do with it. Two different things I could say. If any other city employee in this city behaved the way a good portion of these police officers did, they wouldn't have their jobs anymore. And we all know that. They'd be fired instantly. But for some reason, this behavior, well, that's the way police need to be. It's kind of like the hush-hush that happens underneath. And it definitely shouldn't be tolerated at all. The second thing I had in my head just disappeared. So I'll leave it there and see if it comes back. Is that it? Any thoughts?
I agree that there's a need for a culture shift, and certainly being a police officer, it's a job that's dangerous and high stress, but that's not an excuse to violate human and civil rights. So I fully agree, and you know better than I do from your experience, but.
There's obviously, I mean, this was a national story when it happened. A 16-year-old mother loses her child, and a few days later, they two detectives put her in what they call the box. And 2 hours later, after she's been promised everything in the world, a juvenile being tried in juvenile court, told at one point as long as she says that she can go home, and a whole bunch of other promises that could not be delivered on. They get her to say, okay, I did it. And it took her almost 3 years to get out of prison, get out of awaiting trial, which trial never happened because the only thing they had was this confession. And once this got in front of a judge, the judge says, well, you're not using this. What else you got? And they had nothing, and all charges were dropped. The best reporting on this the series is called Anatomy of a Bad Confession. Now the now retired David Warry, I just thought I'd play his thoughts on, it's only a couple minutes, on what he saw. WBUR, of course, had to go to war in court to get the tapes, but eventually got the tapes.
The first technique they use on her is to make false statements. So they tell her that the medical evidence and the medical examiner has told them that she smothered the baby. The baby was smothered. There is no such evidence at that time. The medical examiner has ruled that the cause of death is undetermined. Nobody told the police that that baby had suffocated or been smothered. So they start with the false statements. And one of the training regimes is you deny, you cut off the defendant, you continue to reject their alibis. In this case, some 13 times, Na Trong says, I didn't do it. Please, please believe me. They cut her off. And the manual says that the intent here is to make the subject understand that it is futile to continue denying, that denials will not work. And you get to a state where the anxiety level is less by confessing than to continue denying. So they make false statements to her. They continue to deny or to reject her denials. And then they get to, that technique, by the way, is called maximization. Then they get to a technique called minimization, which is, you're just a kid. We understand. You're living with your mother. Your mother has you changing her baby's diapers. That's not right. That's not right. And so now they offer her some moral explanation for what she's done to make it more acceptable for her to say, I did it. You're only a kid. After that, they come in with, listen, because you're only a kid, we'll get you in juvenile. If you go to juvenile, it's not going to be treated seriously. The punishment is minimal, if any. And I'm quoting, minimal, if any. But you have to confess now. Otherwise, we'll take it to adult court. And we'll have the medical examiner come. We'll show the evidence that doesn't exist, that you smothered your baby. We'll put it to a jury. Now, which way do you want to go? And your time's limited. You got to decide now. They do that as well. And then they come to something called implied promises. One is leniency if you confess, but the other is the matter of her brothers. Her mother has been described as dysfunctional. It was a bad situation, a family situation. And she has an antagonistic relationship with her mother. She'd run away from home the previous year. They tell her they will get her brothers away from her mother if she confesses. That's what leads to this very quiet, almost inaudible confession. I smothered Kyle.
When the case was dismissed, the chief at the time just got on Twitter, which he liked to do quite a bit, and said a whole bunch of things about the judge involved in the case. Implied that he used the phrase cognitive bias to refer to a sitting judge, which is pretty amazing. The two officers involved, Paggio and Doherty, had his full support. There was never an investigation that I'm aware of. There's not any records that I've seen that was ever investigated internally. And soon after the case, Paggio was promoted to internal investigations, where he stayed until he retired a couple years ago. And Sergeant John Doherty, we'll talk more about him in a little bit, because he's not done causing immeasurable harm to people. In the civil case, the city, one of the most amazing things you'll ever see. The city attempted to countersue her attorney for not getting her out of jail quick enough. They wanted to add her attorney to her lawsuit. They wanted her attorney to be liable for the time that they kept her in jail for the thing that she didn't do.
Well, one of the many things that's stunning about this particular case is that most of what the police did in that interrogation room is not illegal under Massachusetts law. So there's one thing they did that was illegal, and that was to promise her leniency. If you confess, we will do this for you. We will make sure you're tried as a juvenile. We will make sure, those weren't their exact words, but that was the message. That crosses the line. But lying to her, telling her that there was scientific analysis of how the baby died, that was a lie. That is completely legal in Massachusetts, even for juveniles, and in many other states too. Police are allowed and encouraged to do that. They can lie about the evidence that exists against you. The tactics that David Boeri, the journalist, was talking about, minimization, where you offer an excuse to kind of grease the wheels for a confession to someone who's under high stress in an interrogation with armed, usually uniformed police officers for a long period of time. The safety valve, the way out, is to admit to conduct that doesn't seem as culpable. In her case, you're a child. You shouldn't have to take care of this baby. That's not your responsibility. You're only 13 yourself, or 14. That those kinds of minimization tactics to encourage a confession, again, are perfectly legal. So it's not that surprising to me that there wasn't any hammer that came down on these police officers. We listened to that interrogation and we cringed that this is what a young girl went through, and that she ended up confessing to a crime she didn't commit just to get out of the situation. And it happens over and over in wrongful conviction cases. But part of what needs to happen is the law around what police can do in interrogations needs to change.
Especially kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things involved in this case was that they read her the wrong rights because she was a minor. So I think that did not help them at all.
Yeah.
But, so the confession got thrown out, and that was the only evidence they had. They had no physical evidence. That was it. Eventually, the case, I think it was 2015, settled for $2.1 million. Another interesting one. Again, think back to the first two cases. This is while the second case is going on, I believe, or it was right around the same time. Worcester police officer didn't have a prior discipline record, but in 2014, went to his ex-wife's home in Northborough, full uniform, gun on his side, full Worcester police uniform, was denied entry and forced his way into the house through a window with his gun on his side, went to her bedroom and attacked her companion that was in the home, was charged with home invasion and a million charges, all which was continued without a finding. I don't know the particulars around the case, so maybe she didn't testify. I don't know. But he was suspended 60 days and put on a last chance agreement that lasts until 2025. He is still employed by the Worcester Police Department. His discipline record is fairly. He certainly hasn't been. They have not sustained anything against him, but he's been a good boy, it seems, because there's not any complaints against him either. So I guess you could look at that as two ways, that he learned his lesson. I don't know, but home invasion seems like something that should cause concern in uniform. And then this is almost beyond belief. This officer in 2012, so the Worcester Police Department is involved in a multi-jurisdictional online sting, looking for people trying to court people online, especially underage people online. And state troopers posing as a 14-year-old girl has this extended conversation. Here's part of it. And at some point, asks her about the camera in her computer, and acknowledges he knows what he's doing is wrong, because they're talking about a potential meet up, and I knock on the door and SWAT team arrests me. So he clearly knows what he's doing is wrong. His screen name included his badge number, and he identified himself in chats by his real name and his real cell phone number. And so the investigation into this after it happened says that when state troopers looked up his cell phone, connected it to his address, connected it to his, saw there's a license to carry at that address, and pulled it up in the system, he's in uniform and his license to carry, so he knows he's a cop. And so the state police call Worcester to try and verify. Nobody takes responsibility for actually making the call to stop talking to this person online. But the Detective Bureau definitely made a recommendation that since he had not yet done anything wrong, he had not crossed the line into illegal activity, that they should move on to other potential suspects that, for what reason, is unclear. And although this individual was sending messages after they ceased conversation, he's trying to reach back out to what he thinks, again, is a 14-year-old girl. They didn't respond. They just stopped. And he retired before the end of the internal investigation with a full pension. And this is my favorite slide of the presentation. But this is grooming. That's not grooming. This is grooming. That is repugnant on every level to stop that investigation. I mean, I don't even know what to ask. It's so absurd. Again, think back to the first two cases, especially the Ralston case. It seems like multiple investigations found he didn't even do anything. And they chased this guy out to try to chase this guy out of the police department for 8 years. And this guy, he was only talking to a 14-year-old girl about sex. We might as well not continue that. I mean, I don't know what to ask. Do you have anything to add?
I don't. I mean, it's often internal politics about who knows who's covering up for who's protecting whom. We don't know those inner workings, but clearly the egregiousness, there doesn't seem to be much of a correlation between the egregiousness of the misconduct and the consequence.
Right.
And, because these processes aren't transparent, we don't get to know those things, right? We have a question from the audience. I don't know how you want to.
I'm wondering if you can talk from a policy perspective about what kinds of changes in the law are necessary to give some of these investigations and oversight more teeth. So you talked about STEP. So I looked them up on the Post Commission website, and it says that there was one complaint back in 2014. It was sustained. 30 days suspension. There's no other detail, so you wouldn't know the extent of the egregiousness of conduct. You did the same things, which supposedly is a huge step forward in terms of transparency. But the kind of detail that you provided obviously is not a part of that. And even if it were, I guess my question to you from a legal perspective is, huge, reform bill passed. Clearly, it doesn't have enough teeth. What changes are necessary? What is the legislature currently looking at doing, if anything, to move in that direction? And what can or should the public be doing to build momentum behind reform?
Yeah, great question. I can start, and Tommy chime in too, but or anyone. But you mentioned the Post, commission and the new database that just rolled out, and I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Post, which is the statewide database that is publicly available. So you can look up any officer you want. And just as of this summer, the first round of submissions, every one of the 400 plus police departments in the Commonwealth were supposed to submit all findings that were sustained of, allegations of misconduct against an officer. Somewhere under 300 actually did so. So there are a lot of departments that just haven't complied. That's one problem. There's a gap between kind of the promise of what Post is and the execution of what it actually is. But remember, these are, even the ones that do get posted are only the ones that were sustained within their own, department. So there could be lots of viable complaints. There could be an officer who's had 50 complaints, but none got sustained. Why? Well, look at this pattern we're seeing. We don't know why. If they're not sustained, they don't make it into Post. So Post is a step in the right direction, but it doesn't go nearly far enough. Another policy issue that came up a lot in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the reform efforts that were, kind of gaining momentum after that, was about, ending qualified immunity or restricting it in ways that would allow for more accountability. When we hear about officers who keep their jobs, keep their pension, get back pay, regardless of egregious misconduct, then of course the same behavior perpetuates because no one is being held accountable for the misconduct that they conducted. So any efforts to increase accountability and transparency around misconduct are the direction that we want to head. Right now, I'm sitting here saying I think Post doesn't go far enough, but on the other side we have police departments who are making the opposite arguments. Oh, we need to take these submissions off because they don't meet the requirements. Right after about 1,000 submissions were posted in August when the website first went live, and next thing you know, 100 of them were rolled back because there was pushback. We know that unions and collective bargaining plays a big role in what happens, and you've mentioned some of that today, Tom. So all of those things are deeply entrenched in the culture of policing, and they're all things that need to get rolled back for there to be any meaningful change. So that's kind of high level, but I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I
mean,
to this point, so Post is supposed to be licensing and unlicensing or revoking license of police officers. The only revocations it has issued so far are either administrative, the person didn't apply or something like that, people around medical leave, and people that are charged with felonies. That's it. There's not reviewed, from my knowledge, has not reviewed one case yet. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to review cases or if it is just relying on what happens with prosecutors. Mm-hmm. Or prosecutors inherently dependent on the police department. Police departments don't typically like you charging their officers, right? So now you have the same circle of dysfunction.
And the commission, it's not a paid body. These are people who have jobs and then they're on this commission. So there's capacity issues too.
Right.
Yes.
And then I just found this kind of the exclamation point on Chief Jem's tenure as chief. The highest ranking woman in the police department at the time, 2011, her husband is a retired state police officer. And so he tells the newspaper, because she can't, because of policy about talking to media, he tells the newspaper that when she was in the traffic division, it was the chief's mandate that a grant that they received was only to be used for overtime hours during certain hours, trying to make people work their overtime and between certain hours of the day. And she had a subordinate tell her, I'm going to work whatever the hell I want. And the next day she tried to pull him aside and talk to him about that, and he explodes on her. And so she takes it to the chief, and she has a meeting with the chief. And in that same meeting, the chief, so her husband says, the chief says, I'm going to post your job in the traffic division, which is apparently the place you want to be. And I'm going to transfer you, and we're going to get somebody else for your job in traffic. Weird. The cop that her subordinate was the chief's brother, who also, by the time that this was reported in 2011, was the highest recipient of overtime hours in the police department. So, needless to say, I am not a fan of the former chief. At one point, the city council wasn't either, and reported in Go Local at the time. And city council is moving against the police chief is actually a big deal, because in our ridiculous form of government, city council can lose their seat for even commenting on. I'll read it. Shall not direct or request appointments or removal of any person to office by the city manager or any of his or her subordinates, or take part in the appointments or removal of officers, etc. So they're not even really supposed to talk about removing a police chief at the risk of losing their seat. So that's March 2012. You'd think 9/11 would get it done, but it doesn't. And then there's a protest. Latest is reported in April, the following month. The correlation is pretty obvious. And we learned in 2014 that he had a contract that basically prohibited him from being fired. If he was removed as the chief of police, he must be restored to the rank of captain, get all his his civil service rights, all his union rights back. And he had all kinds of protections from wage cuts. If everybody else would their wage cut, he couldn't. He would got a contract which enabled him to go on Twitter and make comments about judges, for example, and embarrass the city over and over and over again. He finally graciously retired in May of 2016, and one of his deputy chiefs was well known by everybody before it was announced who it was going to be. Had been at the Worcester Police Department for 30 years. Was a veteran, a second-generation cop. Grew up in the city. I remember a lot of talk about how he used to be when he was appointed. He used to be a member of the Boys and Girl Club. Was a thing that was true to give him local credentials. That he was he grew up here, and nobody said it outright. It was going to be different, but that was the hope, I think, of a lot of people. And as Stephanie just mentioned, the Post Commission, which is Steve Sargent had to deal with a different environment, at least late in his tenure. The Post Commission being one of them. The most recent release is 4,636 cases of sustained allegations across the state. The first release was, as Stephanie said, 273 agencies that reported. I don't know how many reported in the update. And there's still confusion about. The Post Commission says you're supposed to report anyone that retired or resigned to avoid the consequences of their behavior. And there's still, I don't think anybody understands how far back is that supposed to go?
I mean, we have cases at the New England Innocence Project from the 1970s and 80s who've been incarcerated ever since. So we're looking at officers who are now deceased and who are no longer on the force. We still care about the misconduct they committed decades ago. And so, we need to see these from prior generations of police too, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, and it's the position of the Worcester Police Department that because these people that weren't licensed wouldn't then be listed, because they were never listed by the commission, which is just not what the commission says. And there's, a host of people that you could list that left in the middle of investigations, or in some cases, in at least one case I'm thinking of, tried and convicted for rape while in uniform. So want to just make this clear, because it'll become relevant in a minute. Post says that there's 4 dispositions. They can investigate a case, And the key point I want to make here is it's supposed to be a preponderance of evidence standard. What does the majority of the evidence tell you? It is not a beyond reasonable doubt standard, which just to how much has been reported to Post, I think, is also interesting. I put the population and number of officers there just to make sure that it's in scale. Boston Police Department has reported 735 separate charges. Springfield Police Department's reported 425, and the Worcester Police Department has reported 137. Same with suspension numbers. You can see them there. Boston would be a lot more. They have 4 times as many officers, nearly. But 28 into 247 isn't 4. So the standard of reporting, to be fair, is not exactly clear from Post either on what they actually want. So maybe this will correct itself. Sure.
The conduct evidence standard, is that the same standard that BOPS uses in its internal investigations?
That's what it's supposed to use according to the state.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just also wanted to point this out. Now, look, this could be skewed. There's been a lot of retirements lately. People that are retired in good standing, even if they had sustained complaints, they don't need to be reported. But this is the number of complaints from each kind of tenure, from the 2 tenures and then prior. So there are incidents listed that were submitted to BOPS from prior to 2004, October 2004. More than were submitted for the entirety of Chief Sergeant's tenure, which ended a month and a half ago. And then statistics from at least a piece of his tenure, 2018 and 2022, 555 complaints, 58 sustained. Again, reasonable that police officers might face false claims from time to time, maybe frequently. That there was 86 instances of unreasonable force or unnecessary force investigated, and 0 of them are sustained. There hasn't been a sustained unnecessary use of force complaint by the Bureau of Professional Standards since 2015. Which is, here's one of them that was not sustained. That officer says that this man diagnosed as schizophrenic spit on him on his chest and arm, and that he, this is during COVID, in his defense, and he used an open hand distraction technique to prevent him from doing it again. No, he didn't. He slapped the guy. But nonetheless, they did sustain that charges were related to him reporting the use of force, and that he was confused on what he was supposed to report. He didn't think he had to report that as use of force. So they sustained some complaints against him, but unnecessary force, he was exonerated. The use of force policy charge was related to reporting. And so this rather benign thing, right, compared to some of the things we've seen, I can get there. If the guy would spit on him, he was trying to make him stop doing that, okay. But the interesting thing about this is the charges related to reporting it led to a blue flu that the city is apparently still investigating, and it's going to get back to us at some point on the determination on why there was an abnormal number of call-outs seemingly coordinated 5 days later. And I brought this to kind of make the point that this is the expectation of at least these officers who called out. They decided to protest for finding the officer responsible for not reporting the use of force. They went pretty easy on him, right? Again, the use of force could be legitimate. I'm not an expert, but that there was kind of backlash from internal is on not using unnecessary force is a bit interesting. And then there's this gentleman. He is the last person who has a sustained use of force complaint in 2015. Someone from Community Health Link witnessed him punch a 15-year-old special needs boy. He was fired in 2022. They sustained that use of force. He was suspended and then returned to the force. His record of exonerations and not sustained complaints is interesting. Seemed to bunch together over a 7-year period. He has 5 of them. Only the one with the witness is sustained. That could be reasonable. But this is why he was fired.
Tonight, new developments to a story from the NBC 10 investigators. A night of drinking, smoking, and cocaine use has cost a Worcester police officer his job. That's according to an internal investigation we obtained, which looked at how Rodrigo Oliveira and another officer overdosed inside his home and had to be treated with Narcan. NBC 10's Ryan Kath shows how neighbors complained to the department about loud all-night parties there for months.
The 911 line's recorded. What is your emergency?
Yes, I'd like to report a very loud, very crowded party.
Repeated 911 calls from neighbors about Worcester Police Officer Rodrigo Oliveira, describing constant parties into all hours of the night.
And there's been a party going on every weekend for the past 4 weekends.
But no matter how many times they called, neighbors told us nothing seemed to change.
So he overdosed, and then, that might be cause for termination. It could also be cause for treatment. But he was fired because he was on a last chance agreement from 2015. And NBC Boston, who did that report also reported that neighbors who they spoke to didn't want to speak publicly out of fear. I don't think that reporting crime should make you afraid.
If you met the Worcester Police Department.
Yes.
You were the one that said they come through windows with their uniform on, retaliating, so that would be when they're fearful, right?
You would think that would be reasonable to, yeah. And then there was this in front of the Human Rights Commission in 2021. I think many of you may have heard about this. The captain that leads the internal investigations unit was before the Human Rights Commission and was talking about someone who had 25 complaints, 10 for unnecessary force. I don't know who this is. But he remarked that only 4 of them were sustained. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. At this point, it's pretty obvious that the internal investigations department's investigations are not credible. But when commissioners on the Human Rights Commission asked for his name, he refused to give it and told them to file a public records request.
Worcester Police Department doesn't give out records.
Well, they do now because they've been sued 100 times. But again, this is, if we have any oversight of the police department, the Human Rights Commission probably the one to do it. And they were told, we're not going to tell you who this person with all of these complaints are, but they're being monitored closely. And then, this should be the most horrible case that we've seen. A pastor on Waverly Street was chased into his church for charges of I'm not sure what. But the body cam pilot at the time was running, and so we have video of what happened.
Who are you? Who are you? Why don't you go inside? You have nothing involved.
Oh, that's my daughter. So okay. Yeah, I do have a lot to do with it. Yeah. Okay, so maybe you don't have to.
This has nothing to do with you.
How's that? Kyrie. Kyrie, don't tell me what Rachel.
You done yelling? You done yelling?
Are you done yelling? Acting like a big shot?
We're all set here. You can go inside.
No, you go on.
You're not going to tell me what to do. You can go inside. You're about to be arrested for disturbing the peace.
Here, tyrant. You keep. Let's get him. Look at him. Look at this guy. Look at him.
Hey, what are you doing?
Hey, what are you doing? Oh, you're in a trouble! Somebody record this!
need an ambulance. Oh, he tased me. Oh my God. Oh my God.
They charged him with everything under the sun. The internal investigation said there's no evidence to support the claim that the officer beat or otherwise used excessive force. He deployed his department-issued taser in accordance with his training and Worcester Police Department use of force policies. I believe that.
What year was this?
This was 21. No, this was 19. This was 19. I just want to point out, despite the, every time you hear that the interference in the mic, that's him pulling his taser, I'm pretty sure. But it is interesting that that officer did nothing but escalate that situation. All he had to do was not respond. And it would have stopped right there. But you're not going to tell me what to do, because that's against the law, apparently, in Worcester. They charged him and his son. He was charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. I don't know what the weapon was. Resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and disturbing the peace. He says he initiated because of the loudness. He was disturbing the peace by yelling at him. That was the reason to want to engage to arrest him, and then he ran and all that. Supposedly hit him with the door on the way in. He's running away, and he hit the cop with the door on the way in. Says he pushed the door into him. That's the assault. Nonetheless, for some reason, the district attorney took this trial, and they requested a judge hearing and were acquitted on all charges, and of course have filed a lawsuit as they should. In a church, because he yelled loud. And that brings us to, thank you, Chris, for being here. To Chris's case, he had the audacity to walk home on a sidewalk on Franklin Street. Officers were responding to what seems like was a large fight at the beer garden. Chris wasn't there. He was walking home past the beer garden. This is what officers wrote in their report. I was able to gain control of his upper right arm, move my right hand to stop him from interfering with officers trying to restore order, and then attempted to escort him away from the fray. And he broke free from my grasp and came towards me and K9 Mattis aggressively and assaulted me by pushing me with his hands on my right shoulder. And then another officer involved in the arrest refused orders. Due to his refusal to obey orders and lay on the ground, I grabbed him and brought him to the ground. Chris was charged with assault and battery on a police officer resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. What those officers didn't know was there was an eye in the sky. So you're going to see the encounter 3 times. First time is regular speed. Second time is slowed down a little bit. And then the third time I focused on the officer that Chris is talking to. So Chris walks up to a police officer and says, "I live over there." And that officer's lack of response is, I think, telling. Watch the officer he's talking to. Doesn't move because he's not expecting it. I maybe could get there the scene there that night wasn't good. There's other footage from there that shows fighting galore. I could get to, he was on high, he made a mistake. But to then charge him with crimes that he did not commit is a step beyond. And just for clarity, that is against the law in Massachusetts. That is a misdemeanor, punishable by not more than 1 year or a fine of something, or both. Needless to say, the Worcester County District Attorney did not file charges in the case. So, Chris, you are welcome to say anything you want. I just want to give some background on.
I mean, it actually took about like a year and some change for the charges to all get dismissed. Something that was never reported on, and I chose to like not report on that, was that I'm a dreamer. I'm a DACA recipient. So this really affected me. If those charges had remained, I would have been facing deportation, you know. And another thing, my girlfriend was there. She was tossed aside that night. It was kind of revealing, you know, to hear from the police side of the story, because after the charges were dropped, during the whole lawsuit process, there was a point where Tivnan was interviewed, and he was told, he said that because of this, he felt betrayed by his organization. You know?
Really said that?
Yeah.
Jesus. When so that night you obviously went to lock up. How long were you? That's over the weekend, right? Because you have to wait till Monday.
No. And this is the crazy part. Like, everybody else was getting this bail for, you know, upwards of $500, you know, $600, whatever. And my bail was $50. So right from the start, you could see that there was like
the bail bondsman was like,
right,
let's just get out of here. Yeah. And so you were arraigned on these charges. They were going ahead with these charges until that video came out, right?
Yeah, and I actually got the video. So I was the one that. This was the video from the apartment complex where I lived. So the day after, I go off and I try to find this video because, you know, my parents came to Worcester. My parents are from Boston. I was living in Worcester at the time, and they didn't believe, you know, that I could get arrested for just being out. You know, they thought there was something that I did, something that I instigated. It wasn't until I found this video that I proved to them, and I guess to myself, that this was like, you know, not something that was on me.
You're just asking to go home. And I assume that's what the conversation with that officer was I just live over there. Can I go home?
Yeah, so I don't know if you could tell by the video, but we kind of hesitated. I looked back at my girlfriend and we're like, you know, the only entrance to that building is through there. So I decided to go off to the one officer that seemed like, you know, he was closest to me. And all I said was, you know, I live over there. Can I go home? Before he could react, that's when I felt like a hand. And it wasn't that the police report, I'm not sure if you went over that. Police report says that he identified himself as a police officer, gave me 3 warnings. None of that happened.
No, obviously, none of it happened. It all happened within seconds. And then, of course, he's handling a dog which attacks you.
Yeah.
Not the dog's fault. What were the injuries that you had?
It was a couple bites to my back. It wasn't. The dog raised me, and you know, I was thankful for that. That was an actual fight, because from what my lawyer, who has a canine as well, like a German Shepherd, he told me that they're trained to actually hold you still and could inflict some. Yeah.
How long was it before you got cleared of the criminal charges? How long was that hanging over you?
It was, so this happened October 26th. No, sorry, it wasn't a year. I would think I was cleared around the end of July.
And how long before you got the video?
How long before I got the video?
Yeah, like between the October 26th and when did you get the video?
I got the video the next day.
Really?
Yeah. So my lawyer had the video. Sent it off to the I believe it was the city manager, and that's when it all started.
It still took them 6 or 8 months to clear you. Yeah.
No, that's how it works. Is once the lie starts, you can't just fold over. You got to keep it going and try to make a deal.
Yeah. Yep.
Because if you make a deal, the lie goes away.
Right. Right.
Did they try to get you to agree to a plea deal?
No. So they were trying to contact me on internal investigation, but at that point, like I if they had the video, and I asked them when they did try to contact me, if you have the video, you've seen what happened, and they're like, yes, can you come in? If that was the case, why not just drop the charges from the get-go?
When you were going to court, did you get offered any plea deals from the prosecution?
No.
For the whole year or whatever? Even from day one?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Are you able to tell us if you got offer deals earlier?
We're on him right now.
We're getting there. Yeah, I mean, anything else you want to add, Chris? Like about this? I mean, what was? I mean, you thought at least for a minute there, you're going to jail, right?
Yeah, I mean, jail and then eventually deportation, not even just like jail. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Chris. How was your mentality after the next couple of months after the incident?
I couldn't go outside. Like it's something that if that happens and it's like you have a crowd of people looking around you, and this is happening and not daylight, but there's an audience and nothing can be done about it. Like
you don't trust anybody at that point,
right?
You're afraid to go outside, afraid to talk to people, deal with life. Yeah.
Did you have like any conception that something like that could happen to you?
Yeah. What do you mean conception?
Like before this happened, did it like ever occur to you that something you could just get like arrested for something?
No, I mean, no, wasn't something that was.
Nobody ever thinks like that. It's until it actually happens to them. That's why society's messed up the way it is. It's nobody believes that it's ever going to happen to them until it does.
Black and brown people do.
Okay, I get check on that one.
And I don't know, like I don't know. I'm not aware of anywhere else you've really talked about anything, Chris. So if you did, I missed it. So I appreciate you doing this. Really, I think it's powerful that you're speaking out about this. I mean,
his story's kind of messed up. Like, I mean, I can, like you said, I can understand the situation with the officers.
But cop to it.
Multi people fighting and they're just grabbing people and it's chaos. But it's like I don't know who said it earlier. I think it was you, Stephanie, but it still doesn't give them the right to victimize an innocent person. Especially in his situation where you could see he politely went over to an officer, was like, hey, I live right here. And then somebody else grabs him from behind and slams on the ground. He's getting attacked by a dog.
It's, again, the physical stuff is bad, but trying to send that man to jail for trying to go home.
The mental aspect
is
the worst, to be honest with
Is
you.
anything being done to try to change the culture? So if this is a problem within the culture of the police, and it's been happening for maybe 100 years, and it's still happening, is there anybody doing anything to change their training or to change who's doing the investigation instead of being internal or their external investigations? Like, what's the solution moving forward?
There's lots of solutions. Unfortunately, none of that comes from within the police department. Like a few of those things you said were like, that would be the responsibility of the police department. They don't believe they're doing anything wrong. That's the first thing. A lot of other times, and this is a case here in Worcester, and someone alluded to it a little earlier, that the city councilors are, in fact, and we got one to admit it, afraid of the police department because of their power and their strength and their unionizing and who they support, who they don't support. If we don't support you, well, you're probably not going to get support, kind of thing. And there's all kinds of ways to change this. And some things are really simple. It's a matter of getting cops together with people in the community and having open conversations and saying, look, I'm a human being, you're a human being, let's break bread together, let's talk together, let's grow a garden together, let's paint a mural together. If slowly but surely, even if it's just the officers who don't have typical problems with doing it, eventually it kind of grows and grows and grows. And you find that once people realize that each other is human, that was one particular organization I belonged to, asks the question, well, officer, would you treat this person this badly on a motor vehicle stop if it was your mother? And that should stop you in your tracks. And the fact that you can actually do this to someone else's mother, brother, father, sister, uncle, whatever it be, just, exacerbates that whole situation. So there are things to do out there. I'm hoping to bring about $2 million worth of programming here to the city next year through a program called Love is the Answer. And with any luck, it's been successful across the country. And with any luck, we'll get some success with it here.
I personally had a lot of negative experiences with the police, but I also have a next door neighbor that's a police, and I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, it's
I've
fine.
got chickens, and they've been sharing their eggs with me, so now we've become friends.
Well, here's the thing you got to remember: it's not the entire police department either.
Right.
It's see, I'm getting ahead of myself because I have a lot to say.
Yeah, let's.
I have a lot to say about this.
Let's
So just wait.
Just to wrap up Chris's situation. So that was not unnecessary force by either officer, according to internal investigations. They called the use of the dog, the canine, was a policy failure, and they sustained submitting reports. I'm not aware of any discipline that was. I'm not aware of what the discipline actually was. I don't believe either one of them were suspended. If that's not on, if grabbing a person from behind and throwing them into a dog, and then arresting them for things that they didn't do is not unnecessary force, I'm just not. The non-unnecessary force doesn't exist. And that's why, this is what I mean. I mean, it's on camera. We see it. And they told us it didn't happen. We just saw it. Being told that we don't have eyes should be offensive. And then that situation, I'll just run down the facts. He was convicted in 2002. So I think that Nat's case is interesting for this piece. Nat's case is interesting in its own right. It's interesting because this starts before all of what we've talked about and continues through how the city handles these things today. He was convicted in 2002 of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon and armed burglary. The victim of that crime initially described the assailant as 5'10". Nat is not 5'10". The case was eventually overturned after many appeals due to a witness being not allowed by the judge in the original trial about eyewitness identification expert and how eyewitnesses can make mistakes in things. And the officer at the time conducted a photo array that using a flawed method, and he had no training on doing so. It was May 2016 that a judge finally vacated the conviction, granted a new trial based on the not allowing Dr. Penrod to testify, and of course the prosecutor dropped the charges. Decided not to go for a new trial. In September of last year, a civil jury awarded $8 million to Nat. The interesting thing about this is that the city got themselves removed from the case. They filed for and was granted to be removed from the case. So the two officers involved, one was involved in the interrogation of the teen case that we talked about, Doherty. The other was the person who used to be years ago the spokesperson, and when we take out charges again when appropriate. The city's removed from the case. The two officers lost qualified immunity because these are core civil rights or constitutional rights issues. And so the city argued that what these two cops did was so horrendous that they could not possibly be liable. They didn't train them to do this. It's horrific, and they can't possibly be liable. It's their liability alone. Both of them still work at the Worcester Police Department. If you won't fire bad cops, I'm not sure what you expect the community to think. There are really good cops in the Worcester Police Department. You don't know their names because they don't have the police in the paper for abusing people for no reason, chasing priests through the church, pastors through the church, and the assorted numerous dumb things that we talked about today. There's a lot of officers in this department that hate the scandal every week. whether it's the chief harassing a guy for 10 years or whatever, or any number of just idiotic stories that come out of this police department on a nonstop, constant basis. Nat, go.
Where do you want me to start?
So just also want to be fair to Nat that there's appeals going on in his civil case, so there's stuff he's not going to go there on, and we need to respect that because we want to see him get his money. You start. You've told the story 1,000 times. You start where you want to.
So I did 16 years for a crime I didn't commit. Obviously, everybody knows this at this point. The reason why I overturned my case was what has been known for years, even before my case, but even before I was arrested, that there's an issue with identification issues. There's a way to encourage a witness to point out somebody you want them to point out. There's tactics. It's well known. It's well documented. And we tried to introduce an expert, Stephen Penrod, to my case. And the judge at the time, I don't know if the law is still the same. Maybe Stephanie can correct me on this one, but at the time the law was it's a judge's discretion to allow expert identification witnesses. And the judge didn't see a point of allowing one, even though everything in my case didn't point to me. The person was medium height, medium build. We asked the victim, what do you consider medium height? She said around 5'10". We asked her what her height is. She said around 5'4". I'm 5'3". And the judge still didn't think an expert was needed. On top of that, the identification of the visual. Something covering his head, maybe a T-shirt, she said. She didn't know. Up to the eyebrows, over the head. Dark T-shirt and whitey tighty underwears. That's it. We asked, the cops didn't ask us, we asked that during a hearing, well, what about facial features? See any facial features? Do they have a beard, a mustache, a goatee? I don't remember. So from here down, I don't remember. From here up is covered. And it's 4 a.m. in a dark room. How they got around that, because people are smart, I will give them that. They kept repeating to the jury, she was inches away from his face, asking him, what do you want? What are you doing here? But there's all she could basically see. But the best part about my identification for me was when the detectives got involved. They basically gave her a photo array. I'm not going to get into too much detail because it's still up in my appeals court. But basically, they showed the photo array. They got her to pick it out. And then they asked her for a description of the guy after she picked me up. And her description changed to medium to short length hair, clean cut. During trial, we asked, when did you figure out he had medium to short length hair? Basically, like, that wasn't the exact way we asked, but we went through everything. And, well, how do you know he had medium to short length hair if he had something covering his head? And you can see the way she reacted. She was like, he had hair hanging down from the whatever was covering his head. Now, she already claimed it's up to his eyebrows, up over his ears. So now if hair's hanging out, now you can't even see his eyes. Then we introduced a pair of shorts they found at the scene, and they got away with it by lying. This was the fabricated evidence, claiming that they never searched the room. It was supposed to be up to the techs to search the room, which is bullshit, but whatever. If you're a detective walking in a crime scene, you want to secure a scene, but they never did. Next day, they brought the victim to the house to pick up clothes because she had no clothing. She was just throwing clothes in a bag. And she ended up, I don't know, a week later going through the clothes and found a pair of men's shorts. She don't know whose they are. She never seen them before. Asked every man she ever knew that could have access to the apartment or anything. Everybody was like, they ain't mine. I mean, so obviously there's only the guy that ran out of her bedroom and was whitey-tighty underwears. As soon as I found out, I volunteered my DNA, but the courts, the way they work, they make it sound like they forced me to do it. My lawyer called me up and told me about this, and I was like, all right, take my DNA right away. Went to court, and the way the procedure goes, it's an order from the court. It's not voluntarily, which is kind of messed up, but whatever. I didn't really care. I just wanted to take it. Didn't fight him on it, didn't argue with him, nothing. Came up not mine. Now, I'm sure when they found these shorts and found out there was DNA on it, the cops were probably high-fiving each other during this. We got him. We got him. And then when my DNA came back, it wasn't mine. They were like, shit, how do we get rid of this? I think, I mean, my personal belief, I think there was a conspiracy with the prosecution and the cops of how to they probably put their heads together. I can't prove that. I can't. That's just my own opinion. Don't know if it's true or not, but there were some lies brought up about the shorts afterwards where now all of a sudden the cops were, oh no, I was watching the victim when she was picking up clothes off the short. I didn't see any men's shorts. Why would you be looking for men's shorts at that particular point, like specifically shorts? And they ended up convincing the jury that the shorts were left there by her nephew who stayed there, a week after the incident. And he was there for like 3 weeks. They said, oh, she went back there 3 weeks later to pick up the rest of her stuff. That's when they end up misleading everybody. And that was a fabrication. 16 years later, a lot of hard fighting and aggravation and stress and depression. A lot of depression. This is the tough part for me because it was when my dad passed away. It's around February 2016. My birthday is January 27th. My father normally comes up to see me, and he didn't come. So I call him, like, I don't know, February 3rd, whatever. I don't know the exact date. A few days after. Hey, what's going on? And he starts breaking down, telling me got something to tell me. And I had a daughter that was getting in trouble at the time, so I thought it was about her. And he goes, no, I'm dying. I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, what do you mean you're dying? You're dying? And he had stage 4 liver cancer, and they gave him 6 months to live. So with the prison mentality, I can't show emotions. I'm on a prison floor with other inmates around me. And on top of it, I don't want to show my father weakness at this point, especially with what he's going through. So I took a second. I'm like, all right, hold on a minute. Tried to get myself back together and just started talking about, all right, well, this is your first diagnosis. Go to Dana-Farber, blah, 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 the whole conversation from there. And he's basically settled on. He's like, oh, I'm done. And I'm like, no, well, you're going to Dana. He's fighting me on going to Dana. He wants to go to Cape Cod Hospital. I don't know why the hell he would want to do that, but I'm like, and now I'm getting mad. And I'm like, no, I don't care. This is where you're going. And literally 2 weeks after that conversation, I get a letter from my lawyer that they finally changed the laws that Tom was just talking about, where they changed the identification laws where they're finally admitting everything we were saying back then. But the biggest part about that aspect, the expert we were trying to introduce, Stephen Penrod, was the expert the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts used, one of the experts to overturn the cases. And he's listed all over everything they stated. And I don't know, he listed a bunch of things, but I think there was like 8 points of what we were trying to introduce to SJC, and he says them in the documents. They finally accepted. And that's, I don't know. And I call my lawyer up and I tell him, like, hey, this is what's going on with my father right now. And I've known this lawyer for, the entire time. It was 2016 at this point, so 16 years at this point. No, I'm sorry, because I had 2 years of trial, so 14 years at this point, somewhere around there. We're basically become very, very close with each other. He was close to my family. I'm very close with him now. He saved my life, but it's another story. And he's like, and he knows my father. My father was a great, great person. Very easy to get along. He was a barber. He got along with everybody. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. If I fight this, I'm never going to see my father live. And I have parole coming up in March, a month later. I was ready to walk in and it's like, I did it. I don't care. I'm sorry. My dad's dying. Whatever I had to do, I was ready to throw myself at the mercy. I didn't care about myself at this point at all. And I told my father, he goes, all right, so what are you saying? I go, well, if I go to parole and tell them I did this, I might have a chance to get out. Hey, you gotta understand my father. Like, he kind of laughed a little bit. And he goes, what are you talking about? I go, Dad, they gave you 6 months to live. Even now, it still messes me up. If I fight this and I lose, I'm never going to see you alive. And I have a lot of family members that came up and see me and support me, but nobody supported me like my father. Like, he was the only one that really understood the prison aspect where I had to do certain things. Everybody else was like, why are you in the hole again? They just don't understand that I have to fight for certain things. I have to, plus I'm 5'3", and people try to bully me. I just got to fight. It's just the way it's prison. It's either fight or be a victim. And I'm not a victim. He was the only one that really understood that I could only really talk to. And I tried to explain to him, like, I don't think I'll survive. I'd probably kill myself. I'm not going to lie. I probably would have killed myself if I didn't get out and get to be with him and he ended up dying while I was in there. So he tells me, he goes, I'm going to tell you something right now. I go, why? He goes, how did I raise you? I go, what do you mean? I taught you 2 things in your life. There's a corner. You can go sit in the fucking thing, curl up and die. Or you can stand the fuck up and fight. What do you want to do? And I just had to laugh because he's right. I have no choice. I go, yeah, but this is a different thing with you on the stage now. He goes, and this is what, I literally hung up the phone after this, called my lawyer and said, let's do it. And he goes, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't give a fuck if you get out or not. I'm going to die a happy man knowing you're fucking fighting because I know you didn't do this. Fuck this stuff. Because I know you didn't do this, and you don't even do this, so you stand up and fight. Now call me back when you have something else to talk about, and hung up on me. So I called my lawyer, and literally June of that year, 2016, and I got out. 4 months later. That's how quick it was for me. I mean, it's not quick, but it is quick, but tell you what, that last week was the worst. So since then, everything's been in the paper since then. So I can't really talk about much after that because I'm still pending certain things.
Now, you had your parole hearing, right?
Yeah, I did.
You marched in there and told them, I didn't do this. Send me back to my cell.
I kind of laughed at him.
an
I went
all-time
in there.
gangster
I
moment.
think that was I went in there with such high spirits that I didn't really give a shit about them in any way, shape, or form. Where, I don't remember one of my hearings. I mean, I went to them, I think 2-3 times before that. I don't even remember. Where it's nerves, I don't know, and I know I can't admit because I can't admit to my crimes. I didn't do it. I don't care. And I had 12 to 21 year sentence. So if I don't admit, staying in there till 20, I don't know, 2000, I would have been out by now, but 2021, something like that. And that was I don't know. I can't explain the feeling of walking in there hearing. I had no worries. I didn't care. I walked in there happy. Who walks in a pro happy? And I don't know. I just walked in and was like, I remember walking in there, honestly. I can hear him talking through the door where whoever was one of the guys on the board said, what the hell is he doing here? What does he expect from us? He ain't getting shit from us. Something like that. And I just started laughing.
What year is this?
16.
It's in 16?
Yeah. And so I walk in and they gave me an attitude right away. I just laughed and he goes, you think this is funny or something? I go, I really don't give a shit what you think this is, dude. I'm going to tell you straight up right now, I didn't do it. I'm going to fuck what you think. I go back to myself. I don't even know why I'm here. And that was basically my hearing.
2016, I believe that is a Chairman Tressler.
I don't know who exactly was talking, though. There was a couple guys on it, so I can't say who. But even with all that being said, I don't have any ill will against the police department. I really don't. I know it's weird. Don't get me wrong. But like he said, it's not every friggin' cop. There's a lot of good cops out there. There really is. The problem with the police department, in my view, is how it's probably from the beginning of time. You don't make a rush, you don't get promoted. You don't do things the way they want you to do them. You're not liked. It doesn't matter if you're doing the right thing, especially if you're a detective. Look at the pressure of a detective. I'm going to make you a detective. I'm going to make you a detective. 10 cases each. He closes 3 in 6 months. He closes 8 in 3 months. What do you think's going to happen? He's gone. He's getting a promotion to a sergeant because he just killed it. It's all promotional. Especially the public is one of the worst things for it. Because if there's a high-profile case, you know how much pressure the city's under to close that freaking case? Not about doing it right. Make your arrest. Why can't you do your job? Well, maybe it's not an easy case. Maybe we want to do it right. But the public puts so much pressure on the city. And the city, what do? They go after them. And the captain, chief, whoever, goes down the line to the detective. Basically with threats. You don't close this case, you're gone. This is the biggest problem I see with the police department. It's not about how you do your job. They don't give two shits how you do your job. It's administration. They do not care. The city does not care. Can you make an arrest or not? And with that mentality breeds other bad mentalities. With, I think it was Hazler said something a while ago. I think 2018, actually. Where is this? I don't know what story this is. It's Worcester Magazine. 2018. What was that?
Was that the stretcher one where you defended the guy?
I don't know, this one?
Distraction.
Come look.
See that?
Yes. Okay.
The punch.
Whatever that one was. Hayeshurst makes a comment. I gotta find it. Give me 1 second, please. All right, here you go. When asked to comment on the practice of throwing punches in general, Police Department spokesman Kerry Hazelhurst has called blows to the head a distraction technique. Didn't you use that terminology earlier?
We're talking about the same thing. I think.
Yeah.
Definitely distracting.
And one that is allowed if an officer faces the risk of personal injury, loss of limb, or life.
And this is the one where the person.
I don't know what it was. I'm just saying there's a statement he made. But this is the police mentality. Even if they have 8 of them on one, what is the personal injury on 8 on 1? 8 guys can't control one guy. 8 trained men cannot control one guy. Some guys are bigger than others. Some guys can fight harder than others. I can definitely see that. But there's still cause of a blow to the head, closed fist punch to the head. There ain't other ways to bring somebody down. Can't take out his knees. Can't tackle him. And then everybody pigpile on him. It's just, and I honestly don't blame a lot of the cops for these actions. It's the way they're trained. It's the way the mentality is. It's, again, do your job, you're a cop. But at the same time, with that being said, that badge is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to mean something to that cop more than to us. But it's also supposed to mean something to the public, which the public has forgotten. That's my belief. If you see all the videos that are going around today, simple getting pulled over. I ain't rolling out my window. Fuck you, what do you want? All the videos are the same. So where's the respect for the cop, and how do you expect them to react to you? They're trying to do their job. It doesn't make it easy for them, and they have a job to do. But at the same time, how are they supposed to find out about criminals and do their job if the general public that's not doing anything wrong won't even give them a simple hello? Hey, how you doing? I get pulled over. I've been out of prison for 7 years. I get pulled over. My window's down, my hand's on my wheel. Number one, I don't want to get beat up or shot. So my hand's on the wheel. It's just, everybody knows the mentality of the world we live in today. It's not a safe place. It is a safe place, but it's not at the same time. I don't know if somebody's got some crazy intents in their mind. And imagine the cops' mentality on that. They don't know either. So hands on the wheel, window down. Hey, sir, how you doing today? Good, how you doing, sir? You got your license, registration? You know why you pulled over? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. Oh, you're speeding? Yeah, I don't think I was speeding. You can have that argument with them. I don't have to be calling names. I don't have to be disrespectful. Well, you got your license? Yeah, I'm good. It's in my bag. You mind if I grab it? Yeah, here you go. Warning, walk away. If you're lucky. Again, if you're lucky, but I'm not saying every situation is ideal. I'm not saying that, because it goes back to the whole perspective. Not every cop is perfect. It's them bad apples that fuck it up for the entire police department.
So if you do file a complaint against the police and then they're found it doesn't go into that other website you were talking about?
Nope. Not if it's not sustained.
And 90% of the time they're not responsible.
Yeah. So I mean,
went to court, they dismissed all charges, but that made sure I wrote down everything that police did to me, and then the head of that department was in Southborough Police, came into court and he said, there was a complaint filed, but we found it not sustainable.
Yeah.
I was so mad.
Well, I mean, it's a mental aspect of the politicians, cities, and cops and courts to protect the cops.
I would just last note on Nat's case. In the civil trial, they asked Hazelhurst if he had any regrets about the way he conducted the case, and he said absolutely no.
Nope.
And that guy can arrest you right now. Can walk in the door and arrest you right now to this day.
And again, like what you said is, and I mean, I still don't understand where. I gotta figure out how to word this correctly. Just basically, the city's not responsible, but he's still allowed to work for the police department.
Yeah. Somebody would do something so egregious.
Doherty, like you just seen.
That these people would do something so egregious that they couldn't possibly be responsible, but they continue to employ.
Anyways, ending what I want to say is, and I really wanted to get this out because a lot of people think I don't think like this, or I shouldn't think like this, and they think I'm, I don't know, messed up for thinking like this. I really don't care what people think. Let me put that paper. Oh, where did I put that? Did I drop it? Oh, I got it. We're sitting on it. There's a terminology I used ever since I was a kid. I'm sure a lot of people have heard this terminology when somebody says it is what it is. Do any of you really know what that means? I don't think a lot of people really understand what it means. So I looked it up because I know what it means to me, but I wanted to get the proper phrasing for everybody. It's commonly used to acknowledge a situation that cannot be changed or controlled. It implies an acceptance of whatever the situation is or the circumstances, even if they are less than ideal or unfortunate. The phrase can be used in any situation. Basically, the situation is what it is. I use that a lot in my life where it helps me get through a lot, to be honest with you, where every day, I'll just use a very small example. Every day, like bills are backing up. I'm freaking out. I can't pay bills. I got to get to work, things like that. Well, you know what? It is what it is. I can't pay my bill right now until I get to work, until I get my paycheck. So why am I going to let that stress me out and freak me out until I actually have the money to do it? Main goal is to get to work. How do you fix a problem? The reason why I'm using that is I view a lot of situations with getting pulled over. It is what it is. We all know what happens when we get pulled over. The cop's going to come to your door. Everybody knows us. Knock on your window, roll down your window, license, registration. Everybody knows us. It is what it is. But everybody's so focused on putting a bad light on the police department in any situation, just even if you're at cause, it is what it is. Do I agree with, like, the situation we were talking about earlier where with Chris, what happened to him? No. Absolutely 100% no. There's a difference between understanding the situation in police departments and the stress they have to deal with and going above and beyond their job. Or let's make it even simpler. Some people with power should not have fucking power. Okay? They have this mentality once they have that badge, I'm the man. That's you're gonna do, and that's it. And even their other officers can't control them. But their other officers, it's a brotherhood. They can't go against them in public. They can say shit behind the scenes, but they'll never say shit in public. Because you'll have a breakdown of the police department. And the last thing I want to close with is, does everybody realize we need the fucking cops? What's going to defund the police? What the hell are we going to do when we need a cop? How about we train them? How about put some of the funding, instead of defunding, how about put the funding into training? Like the perfect suggestion I liked, cops should have socialization training. Go to the pub, go to the schools, talk to kids. They used to do that when I was a freaking kid. It's a different mentality, and I think they've just been beat up way too much, and the morale is so bad that why would they go to your house if you need help? Because you want to defund us, so you don't want us. I think it's a bad move. I think it's very hurtful for the police departments, and I think the focus should be on retraining and trying to build them back up at this point. Because if you don't build them back up, you have nothing. And especially the way this country is going right now.
I want to, I don't mean to cut you off, or, go ahead.
The Worcester Police Department did offer sensitivity training a few years ago, and only 4 police officers took the training. So we...
Because they made it mandatory. That was the problem.
Well, yeah, it wasn't mandatory.
Yeah, but I'm saying only 4. And that, we actually used it at ex-prisoners and prisoners organized for community advancement. So if I had someone on King Street who was mentally ill or has trauma with a police officer, that officer would come out in regular clothes or talk to them or do something to, you know, other than arresting them. But there's only 4 out of the entire police department that was willing to take that sensitivity training.
Because of the mentality.
Yeah. Also, I gotta say, I'm a Worcester resident, you know, born and raised, and my kids live here, and I love it here. But, you know, this whole that we have to give respect to police. That I've watched these cops. Like,
Where do you live?
Right here off of Platinum Square.
Yeah, you said what, King Street or something? What'd you say?
Oh no, I didn't live on King Street. I worked on King Street.
Okay, that's not a great area.
Yeah, I know.
So you know, there's a lot of gangs, a lot of violence, a lot of shootings in that area.
I know.
So how do you? So if you have an officer that just wants to be polite to everybody,
we don't.
I know. I'm just giving an example. It doesn't mix well. You need somebody that can be.
Worked for me.
Huh?
It worked for me.
You guys say like you don't.
Well, it's again. So there's I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, yes, it's how you treat people, it's how you talk to people, it's association.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in them areas, there's got to be respect.
I don't want to descend to debate because we're out of time, and then we'll be here all night.
Okay.
I want to give Stephanie a chance to wrap up because you're the expert here.
Oh, geez.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I very briefly want to thank Chris and Nat for telling their painful stories. I'm sorry for what happened to both of them. I fully respect and love Nat and his experiences and what he's been through, but I disagree that we're talking about a few bad apples, and I think what we're dealing with is something more systemic, and that we need a larger cultural shift, and I hope that we'll get there. And I don't think that police misconduct is one of the is what it is things. I think
No, I didn't
like
use
that.
it in that.
Okay,
I didn't mean
good,
it for that phrase. No.
Good. I didn't think that's what you were getting at, but
No.
I want to make sure that it is something that can and has to change.
I was talking about how to deal with things with dealing with the cops,
Right.
not the cops themselves.
Right. So, so I hope we will get there, and I appreciate all of you coming out.
And I would say a little different spin on that. We ask police officers to follow orders and follow the lead of leadership. I think they're doing that in Worcester. I think the leadership's been terrible.
Horrible.
And to continue to reinforce bad behavior by excusing it through, what is not credible internal investigations department, is going to ask for more of the same. We're now in the midst of, it's very apparent to me that there is one option for what we're going to do with leadership in this city next, and that is appoint the deputy of the last field chief. And I don't have a problem with that person individually, personally. I met then Deputy Chief Officer on one occasion, worked with him through a story I was doing. Nice guy, knew a lot of stuff. It's not about him personally. It is about the deputy of the deputy of the deputy. For now a third generation, we're going to do the same thing and expect different results. And that is because we have a city administration that is gutless. The city manager needs to step to a microphone and say, I understand that this problem has existed for now 3 generations, and I am going to fix it. And until somebody acknowledges that there's a problem, we're going to do more of the same. And what we're doing now is we're in a holding pattern. So the federal government can say it. So the local politicians, the people that we elect, and the people that we don't elect, the appointed city manager, don't have to say it because that'd be very controversial if they said it. We'll just wait another year and a half, 2 years until the federal government says it, and then we'll just point to them. It is wholly gutless and lacks all possible leadership skills whatsoever. Somebody in the city who's in a position of authority, go to a microphone, acknowledge the problem, and say that they're going to fix it. And until we...
That'd have to be the city manager, wouldn't it?
It would be. If he won't do it, city council should get somebody that will, because it's about time that we acknowledge that this is a problem that has existed for a very long time. And nobody wants to intervene, and it's about time.
I still don't understand. Remember we had this conversation. I still don't understand. The second biggest city in New England, the mayor has no power.
Well, ironically,
somebody explain this to me. I understand that, but you're the second biggest city. You're an elected official.
Well, let me address that.
You're supposed to be in charge of it all.
So we can get people out here. So the organization that I am a co-founder of, Mass Spring, that hosted this event, this is the first thing we've done. We will be running a signature campaign after this year's election for a city charter commission. A lot of people have talked about it. We will do it. Our website is betterworcester.org. If you would like to volunteer to help us collect signatures and volunteer with that effort, we would welcome you. Because yes, there are structural issues with the way city government's compiled, including we elect people that have very, very little power. We have two branches of government that are completely unequal. We basically defy basic American civics with our form of government, and it's well past time to fix it. And this is one of the ways that we can put the structures of city government in place that will fix this problem, because I honestly don't believe that the current structure will.
That's why I believe the mayor should be the one responsible, because he's the elected official.
Well, we're going to do that.
If he screws up, see you later.
No, we're going to collect 20,000 signatures before we can.
That'll be easy.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Nat, Chris.